This is the oldest temple unearthed anywhere on this planet. It was built 11,500 years ago.
On a hill in Turkey, massive stone pillars rise from the earth.
Older than the pyramids, older than writing itself, on a quiet hill in southeastern Turkey stands a monument that has puzzled the world for decades. Göbekli Tepe, its massive stone pillars, some towering over 16 feet high and weighing more than 20 tons, rise out of the earth like the remnants of another world. Carved into these stones are animals, human-like figures, and cryptic symbols that have defied every attempt at explanation. For years, scholars stared at these carvings, offering theories that ranged from death rituals to primitive art. But none of their answers ever quite fit. And then, something extraordinary happened. Artificial intelligence was unleashed on the mystery, and what it uncovered would challenge everything we thought we knew about the world's first monument and the people who built it. The story begins in 1996, when archaeologists started digging into a hill that farmers had long assumed was just another mound of dirt. What they uncovered would rewrite the timeline of civilization. Beneath the soil lay an ancient temple more than 12,000 years old, built thousands of years before the Egyptian pyramids, and long before the first cities or farms were supposed to exist, at a time when humans were still hunter-gatherers, wandering the land with no permanent homes. Someone had managed to organize massive groups of people to carve and move stones heavier than cars. This single discovery overturned the long-accepted story that farming led to civilization. Instead, Göbekli Tepe suggested something else entirely: that belief, ritual, and ceremony may have been the forces that first drew humans together. The carvings on the pillars only deepened the mystery. Vultures with outstretched wings, snarling foxes, venomous snakes, and headless human figure symbols repeated again and again across different circles of stone. The pillars themselves weren't just supports. Many were carved with arms, hands, and belts, as if they represented human forms. Were they gods? Ancestors? Shamans transformed into stone? Some researchers thought the animals were tribal totems. Others believed they were part of ancient death rituals. A few even pointed to strange handbag shapes carved on certain stones, fueling fringe theories about forgotten civilizations or even visitors from beyond Earth. Without a written language, there was no way to know for sure. For decades, archaeologists tried to make sense of it, but every interpretation was guesswork. The problem was simple: humans could only see so much. That limitation is exactly what AI was built to overcome. Archaeologists first scanned every pillar and carving at Göbekli Tepe using LiDAR lasers and 3D mapping, creating a massive digital replica of the site. Then they fed the data into neural networks designed to detect patterns invisible to the human eye. What emerged was staggering. The animals carved into the stones weren't random decorations at all, they were constellations. A fox carved into one pillar, consistently aligned with the star Sirius. A scorpion always appeared in the same position as the constellation Scorpio. The site, once thought to be a crude temple, turned out to be nothing less than a celestial observatory, tracking the stars with incredible precision. This revelation brought fresh attention to Pillar 43, known as the Vulture Stone. For decades, its scene of vultures, scorpions, and a headless man had sparked endless debate. But AI analysis found something jaw-dropping. The arrangement of the symbols matched the night sky exactly as it appeared over 12,800 years ago. That date is no coincidence. It lines up almost perfectly with the Younger Dryas impact event, when fragments of a comet likely struck Earth, triggering massive floods, wildfires, and a sudden return to Ice Age conditions. The Vulture Stone wasn't just art, it was a permanent record of a catastrophe, carved in stone by people who witnessed it. But the AI's revelations didn't stop there. Across the site, patterns suggested that the builders weren't only recording a single disaster, they were tracking cycles, cosmic rhythms of destruction and renewal that they believed repeated throughout history. Some researchers now think Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple or an observatory, but a warning system, a time capsule buried deliberately to preserve knowledge for the future. When the site was eventually covered over, It may have been a conscious act of preservation, ensuring that the message would survive long after its builders were gone. This raises a haunting question. Who were these people, and how did they know so much? Conventional history tells us they were simple hunter-gatherers, roaming the land with stone tools and no writing. Yet here they were, building monuments aligned with the stars and recording cosmic disasters. Some argue they inherited this knowledge by simply living under the sky for countless generations, watching patterns and passing them down orally. Others speculate they may have been guided by survivors of an earlier lost civilization, one wiped out by the very disaster they recorded. Whether inherited or remembered, the builders of Göbekli Tepe clearly understood more than we've ever given them credit for. And Göbekli Tepe isn't alone. In recent years, archaeologists have uncovered other stone hills across Turkey. Sites like Karahan Tepe, filled with the same T-shaped pillars and cryptic carvings. These discoveries suggest that Göbekli Tepe wasn't an isolated wonder, but part of a larger cultural network, a civilization of sorts that thrived before farming, before writing, before everything we call history. With AI now scanning these sites too, more connections are beginning to emerge, painting a picture of a people who are far from primitive. What does all this mean for us? At the very least, it forces us to rethink the story of civilization. The people who carved Göbekli Tepe didn't see time as a straight line, the way we do. Their symbols suggest they saw cycles of life, death, destruction, and renewal etched into the fabric of the cosmos. To them, humanity wasn't separate from the universe, but part of its rhythms, a participant in its drama. And now, with AI helping us read their message, we are only beginning to understand what they tried to say. Was Göbekli Tepe a temple, an observatory, or the world's oldest warning sign? Did its builders leave behind a cosmic message for future explorations? Or are we simply projecting our own fears onto their mysterious carvings? The stones remain silent, but the patterns they hide continue to whisper. The question is, are we ready to listen? Older than any city we know, older than writing, and even older than the first farms, Göbekli Tepe sits buried beneath a hill in southeastern Turkey, hiding secrets so deep that not even the most experienced archaeologists could unlock them. For decades, its massive stone pillars and animal carvings have been called the world's first temple. But the truth might be far stranger. With the help of artificial intelligence, new discoveries are suggesting that this site wasn't just about ritual or worship. It may have been the earliest attempt at science, a record carved in stone to warn us of disasters that reshaped the earth. When the first spade hit the ground in 1996, nobody expected much. Farmers in the area thought the mound was just a pile of rocks. But beneath the soil, archaeologists uncovered something that stunned the world: T-shaped pillars standing in circles, carefully arranged like an open-air cathedral. These stones weren't random chunks of rock. They were carved with precision, decorated with snakes, foxes, boars, vultures, and even abstract symbols no one could explain. The dating of the site was the most shocking part. Over 12,000 years old. That meant it had been built long before humans were supposed to know how to build anything permanent. According to the old story of history, farming had to come first. People would plant crops, settle in villages, and then slowly learn how to build. Göbekli Tepe shattered that idea completely. But if farming wasn't what brought people together, then what did? The answer seemed to be belief. These hunter-gatherers, who should have been wandering and struggling just to survive, had gathered in huge numbers to build something enormous, something that required organization, planning, and shared purpose. They didn't need crops to unite them. They had ceremony. They had ritual. They had a reason to carve their visions into stone and raise pillars that still stand today. Yet, as astonishing as the site was, it left behind questions that refused to be answered. Why vultures? Why snakes? Why repeat the same animals over and over? What was the meaning of the headless human on the famous vulture stone, with strange abstract handbag shapes above it? Was this simply art? Was it myth? Was it memory? For decades, researchers debated, but without a written language, there was no key. Every explanation was speculation, and every theory fell short. That is, until the rise of artificial intelligence. In recent years, archaeologists turned to technology that could see patterns no human brain could. They scanned the entire site with lasers, creating a perfect 3D digital replica. Every carving, every crack in the stone, every alignment was preserved in data. Then they fed it into powerful neural networks, teaching AI to look for relationships between the carvings. Where humans saw a fox or a scorpion, the machine saw connections stretching across pillars, across circles, even across the entire site. And the patterns it revealed were staggering. The animals weren't random decorations, they were constellations. The scorpion carvings lined up with Scorpio. The fox pointed to Sirius. Carvings repeated in ways that mirrored the night sky, turning Göbekli Tepe into a giant observatory made of stone. The builders weren't just carving myths. They were recording the heavens. This leaves us with a haunting question. Who exactly were these people? Conventional history insists they were simple nomads with stone tools and no permanent homes. Yet they tracked the stars, aligned their monuments with the cosmos, and recorded events that shaped the planet. Some suggest they inherited this knowledge the hard way by living under the sky every night, watching cycles unfold for generations, passing the knowledge down until it was carved into stone. Others believe they were guided by survivors of an earlier advanced civilization, one wiped out by the very catastrophe they recorded. It's an idea most mainstream scholars dismiss. But the sheer sophistication of Göbekli Tepe makes it hard to ignore. And Göbekli Tepe is no longer alone. Across southeastern Turkey, new sites are being uncovered. Karahan Tepe, Sefer Tepe, and others together called the Stone Hills. These places share the same pillars, the same carvings, the same mysterious symbols. They suggest a network of people connected by shared beliefs, shared knowledge, and perhaps a shared fear of the skies. Once again, AI is being used to analyze the carvings, and early results show connections between the sites, strengthening the case for a widespread prehistoric culture far more advanced than we've ever imagined. What's most unsettling is how relevant their message feels today. The builders of Göbekli Tepe saw time not as a straight line, but as a cyclical repeating rhythm of destruction and renewal. They carved animals as constellations, not just for art, but for warning, as if to say, watch the skies. Disasters have come before, and they will come again. To them, humanity wasn't separate from the universe, but part of it, caught in its rhythms, bound to its fate. And now, with AI finally helping us decode their message, we're left with an eerie feeling. Maybe they knew something we've forgotten. Was Göbekli Tepe a temple to gods we no longer remember? Or was it humanity's first observatory, a cosmic survival manual, carved in stone? Did its builders leave behind a warning meant for us? Or are we simply projecting our fears onto their mysterious art? The stones don't answer. They only stand silent and immovable, carrying a message across 12,000 years. And the question is no longer whether Göbekli Tepe was important. The real question is whether we are ready to hear what it has to say. On a hill in Turkey, massive stone pillars rise from the earth, older than the Egyptian pyramids and older than even writing itself. The carvings of animals, shapes, and cryptic figures on these structures have baffled experts for decades. Now, artificial intelligence has stepped into the mystery, scanning patterns no human eye could fully trace. What it uncovered challenges assumptions about the world's first monument and the people who built it. Before we explore the discoveries, it's worth returning to the moment that sparked global fascination, the unearthing of Göbekli Tepe. That single event reshaped archaeology and set the ball rolling, the site that rewrote history for ages. Archaeologists and historians have each told the simple story about how civilizations started. Their stories and theories have all seemed to add up to the fact that the first people learned to farm. Once the early people learned to grow their own food, they didn't see any need to always gather food or go hunting all the time. In learning this, they were able to settle down in one place, build villages, and create a growing community. In this old way of thinking, farming was the key that unlocked everything else. From villages to great empires, But the arrival of a discovery turned that whole idea on its head. In southeastern Turkey, a place called Göbekli Tepe was hiding under a hill. First noticed way back in the 1960s, it wasn't until a real dig started in 1996 that its true importance became clear. What they found was a series of huge stone circles with massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing as much as 20 tons. These pillars were covered in detailed carvings of animals like boars, foxes, and snakes. The most unbelievable part of these structures was that they were built over 12,000 years ago, thousands of years before the pyramids in Egypt. To put this time into perspective, humans at the time were still living as hunter-gatherers, with no farming, no towns, and nothing like a survival structure in place. So how could a society of people constantly on the move build something so huge? Göbekli Tepe was proof enough that the early ancestors were much more advanced than anyone had thought. It suggests that a shared belief system and a desire to come together for ceremonies might have been what made people gather in one place. Long before they ever thought about farming, it was a new way of thinking about how civilization began. But as remarkable as this discovery was, it left explorers with a bigger puzzle and a lot of questions. From what the carvings were supposed to be, to what they meant, down to why the place was built. For decades, the ancient carvings have been a wonder to scholars who have tirelessly tried to guess their meaning. It was also a tedious task, because it was almost impossible trying to decipher a language they couldn't understand. These carvings were now messages left by people who saw the world in a way we no longer can. It was debatable. As some researchers pointed out, these markings could just have been nothing more than art. But, to those who know secrets of the world hide behind markings, these carvings were more than just art. Soon enough, the meanings to them would mean much more than anyone could have possibly imagined. When looking at the pillars for the first time, obvious animal carvings like vultures, snakes, boars, and foxes are seen on the structure. These are not the type of carvings anyone would expect from a set of early hunters. These symbols are often snarling and aggressive, sometimes with male organs on full display, and they appear again and again across the site. The T-shaped pillars they are carved on are believed by some historians to be figures of humans, with arms and hands carved into their sides and belts around their waists. Both these carvings of human-like pillars and powerful animal symbols raised a lot of questions about whether or not the animals were totems for different clans or tribes. Some questioned if the symbols were part of a ritual or form of shamanism where people took on animal spirits. Regardless of what the answer might have been, what remains is the mystery behind the symbols. But what's particularly interesting is the repetition of these symbols. While each of the big circles at Göbekli Tepe has a slightly different feel, with some having more foxes and others having more snakes, the same symbols show up everywhere. This makes everyone believe that the people who built the site shared a common language or belief system, even if they were from different groups, but no one could figure out what that language was. The most famous example is Pillar 43, also known as the Vulture Stone. This pillar in question was covered in carvings that seemed to tell a story. There were obvious carvings of a vulture, a scorpion, a few other animals, and a notable headless human figure with a phallic symbol. For decades, archaeologists and others have tried to figure out what this scene means. Some thought it was a ritual of death and rebirth, with the vulture carrying the soul away, while others saw it as a kind of ancient map or a record of a specific event. There were also handbag symbols that appeared in some carvings that have even sparked theories about ancient alien visitors. The big problem was that there was no Rosetta Stone or a key to help unlock their meaning. The conventional research methods had hit a wall quite a number of times, so much so that for years, observers were stuck, staring at these carvings and only seeing what they wanted to see. The research was limited by human biases and the sheer volume of data. But what if a mind without those limitations could see patterns humans could not? The birth of AI archaeology. For a long time, archaeology was so slow and difficult that a single archaeologist could spend their whole career studying a handful of artifacts. But now everything has changed as the digital age has changed the game completely. To crack the code of Göbekli Tepe, researchers first had to create a complete digital copy of the entire site. They used technologies like LiDAR, which uses lasers to create a detailed map of the site's surface, and 3D scanning to capture every nook and cranny of the pillars and their carvings. These advanced technologies easily allowed them to build a massive, high-resolution digital database of every single symbol. It was a perfect dataset for a new kind of brain to analyze that. The goal wasn't to ask for the machine to provide answers to what the carvings meant. Instead, the work of the AI was to find a common link in the whole database. Scientists and archaeologists used computer vision and neural networks to find relationships between the symbols that were too subtle or complex for any human to notice. Just like how these experts in the field were able to spot a boar and a snake on the same pillar and think it's a random pairing. This technology could do things more directly. The AI could go through every single carving at the site and find that the boar always appears near a certain star pattern, or that the snake's position changes, depending on its relationship to other animals. It was the perfect tool they needed all this time to see beyond the surface. All the years that scientists, geologists, and archaeologists spent trying to compare the carvings on a dozen pillars could easily be done by this new technology in a matter of minutes. In addition,